Hey guys, so I am just going to wait here for a little bit, making sure that everyone's here. Chat, let me know where you're coming from, where you're logging in from, or put in your name. I know this is going to be an intimate group. Awesome, Molly, so happy to have you here. Very cool. And I know this is a Dreamers and Doers webinar, so we have a few people who have registered. So we're just gonna wait for them for a couple of minutes. Yeah, no, thank you guys for inviting me. Me too. Molly, always the champion. I love you. Okay, well, we are going to get started. And as people come in, they'll just introduce themselves, and that will be awesome. I'm going to turn the light on so you can see me. And today we're all here because a lot of you have been asking, how do we hire more affordably? And as being a small business owner, as you know, it's really hard to manage cash flow, and you're going and you're trying to cover expenses and still trying to get stuff done, and then how to delegate, and there's all this stuff going on as you're trying to manage your costs. And a lot of the time, even when you're beginning, you're like, oh, how do I even do this, right? Like, how do I get started? And navigating the gig economy is all like funky, but we're gonna cover how to deal with those challenges, right? So how many of you right now are in the process of thinking about hiring? Put one in the chat. All right, and then how many of you have already hired and you just want to do it better? All right, cool. And how many of you are just trying to dip your foot in the water and just thinking about, all right, I think I want to hire, but I'm not really sure because I don't know. I don't want to screw it up, right? That sometimes as entrepreneurs, we're thinking about that. All right, very cool. And so, yeah, I really want to talk about it because there is a world, I promise you, in which you can hire consistently reliable people that show up day to day, and it's really fantastic. So I want you to think about, like, what is that perfect hire in your mind, right? And maybe write on a piece of paper, or think about it. So whether you're looking for a virtual assistant or an admin or a marketing coordinator, someone to help you with your social media, any of this, like, how does that person show up to work? And what I mean show up is, communicate digitally, or maybe you're in a co-working space. Like, how do they show up? And really think about that, because oftentimes we end up settling, and this is, it's almost like you're on a dating app and you're swiping and you're just like, I can't find anyone. And you're really looking for that perfect someone. But it's not about that perfect someone, but it definitely is about how do we find someone that's great for right now. All right, so just to give you a little bit about who I am, I'm Juliana, if you don't know me, and I run a business called ScaleTime. And what we do is really help small business owners with their operations. So how to make sure that they're working on their business instead of in their business, and going through the day-to-day and be very proactive. And, I've had about 14 years of business operations, have, started off on Wall Street and did a bunch of crazy things along the way. One of those was a very long time ago when I was at Levy. We used to have these huge hiring fairs, and I had to go through and interview like 100 people a day that I had to train, like, to select about 40, like our team, train them in 2 days, operate $1 million business in a week, and then rinse, wash, repeat every couple of weeks, right? So this was something that I learned very quickly that, oh my God, I didn't want to manage that hard. And in order to do that, I needed to set up systems and processes so that I could, basically manage a lot less, train faster, and hire better. So that every single time I was operating one of these establishments, we were doing it with a lot more fruition. There was more flow. It was easier, and people just got shit done, right? And like that's the plan. That's the goal, is to just make sure that your people are doing stuff so that you can concentrate on the bigger picture and managing all the moving parts. Now, at ScaleTime, it's a little bit hard sometimes to explain to people what exactly operations is for small business, because you're wearing 20 million hats. But I like to think about, this is, if you're scaling, right? And you're saying, okay, well, what if next week I had 5 new clients or 5 new members, right? How would that look? Like, would I be able to service them? Would it be easy? Like, would I have my onboarding on point? Would I have everything that I could just take them on? And some of you may say, like, yeah, 5 is doable, a little scrappy, but doable. Then what about 20? And what if you had 50? Right? I mean, I know for a lot of people, it's like the dream is to have a waiting list, but a waiting list basically means that you're at capacity and you haven't been able to replicate those things that you need to in order to really, really scale. So maybe a waiting list is your thing. Really high-end clients are all paying you 100 grand. awesome. But, if you want to scale the business beyond yourself, how do you do that? And that's really where we come in to help. And today we are going to talk about, one of those pieces, which is hiring reliable, consistent people. And that, for a lot of people, whether they're a solopreneur, they're like a one-person shop, or maybe you've got a couple of freelancers, maybe you have some strategic partnerships happening, maybe you're being white labeled, maybe you're a full-blown agency or business where you have a lot of full-time staff, but you're thinking about your profitability, and now you're looking at, how do we offshore? How do we outsource? And, to give you an example, I was dealing with a business and it was phenomenal, right? She's had her business for like 20 years, and her business was done with a couple of key employees, and everyone else was more or less on a contractor basis. And they're all over the country, right? Like they produce these amazing videos, and they generate research for big brands like Dove and Microsoft. And even though she had been running her business for a long time, she still needed to lower her costs because they were draining, and she needed better, quicker flow in the business so she could handle more volume. And we were able to take that on and really be able to say, okay, how do we find people who are less expensive, who we can train up, who are good, who are reliable, and how do we get them in a place where we can then project manage them so that we can have that flow. And I believe it was last year, she spent the month of August in Europe with her kids. And that was really phenomenal because she was able to then have that consistency of people that were working for her and not worry about it. And not only that, but it was her highest producing month, and we increased her profit margin by like 15% and like cut down on her labor costs like 20%. It was huge. It was a huge, huge deal because it meant that for the same amount of effort, she was making a whole lot more money, which is the dream, right? I had another client, they're working together for like, I think it was 2 months. We increased his profit margin, within the first session by like 24%, which was huge. And then afterwards, he was able to go to Costa Rica after hiring a really, really good, legit freelance team to handle the work. And he had a system in place. And he checked and managed his team for 15 minutes while he took his girlfriend to Costa Rica for a week, which was great because he wasn't in the weeds. He wasn't worried. He wasn't like, oh my God, do I trust them? Are they going to get the job done? Because he knew that they did, and he had all this stuff in place. Now, how do we do that? That's really what I want to teach you guys today, is that first part of how do we even find these people? Is sometimes it's just like, I can't find good people. I'd rather just do things myself. So how do we get out of that? Now, the first thing is you have to know your needs. A lot of the times we do hiring and we're just like, I need to hire a person, a body, anybody, please. And that works sometimes because you're able to offload stuff. But if we're more strategic about it, we're actually hiring people that are moving our business forward, right? So do we need sales? Do we need to just create more efficiency in something? Do we just need to free up our time so that we can, concentrate on those higher level tasks? What are the specific needs? Then getting to know the market. How much does it cost, right? I mean, how much does it cost someone in the Philippines or someone in the Ukraine? Or do we want someone who's US based? Do we want someone in the same time zone? Then let's craft our job post. This is the most important thing in this entire piece, is the job post, because it's going to help us to qualify as much as possible, right? Then we have to interview people. And there's a lot of apps out there, and I can mention some in our tools section about how to kind of get away with interviewing people. I still think that nothing is as good as being able to see someone in person, get a vibe for them. As long as we're being consistent about it, asking the right questions, but interviewing is still a thing. So I don't care what anybody says. I'm going to be very, very, what's the word here? Controversial, and say you still need a human element to this process. And lastly, we're going to try a few people at the same time. So it's a little bit of Hunger Games at the end of this, but it works because you're able to see the differences in people. So not only are they like talking the talk, but they can also walk the walk. Because a lot of times, people will be like, I'm an expert at X, Y, and Z, but it turns out that no, they've just really sold you on it. Now, I like this whole thing because we at SkillTime have, we use freelancers all the time for several projects. And one of the things that I like to ask them is what goals are they looking to achieve, especially when they come on board. And look at this. They're saying, finish incoming tasks smoothly and satisfactorily. Finish the task before the due date. That's amazing. Like, I actually saw this a couple of days ago, to be very honest. And I was just like, that is awesome, because everyone complains about, missing deadlines. And my people are just like, I send something out and I think it's going to take a week. It takes a couple of hours. I'm amazed. It's great. It's amazing. That's the type of engine that we want. It's a type of performance. And then my project manager is like, kick some ass next month and close more clients as she's doing sales coordination. So that's the type of stuff. Like, we want people who are proactive and pushing the business forward. And this is how we're going to do it. Now, here's Kia. This is my dog. She's our mascot at SkillTime. Give me a 1 if you think she's cute, and if you have your own office mascot. But one of the things that Kia is trying to really say is that people spend a lot of time on hiring. It is like one of the biggest costs of doing business is people, and they can spend as much as 3 hours a day just looking for the right employee, which is a lot. And there's so many more stats that go to, hiring the wrong employee costs you 25%, to like 34% of their salary. Most people that are going to quit within the first year, quit within the first 3 months. Like, it's a very big time suck and a huge expense if not done in a way that's really workable. And I want to save you guys some of that huge amount of headache, time, and money. All right. Now, what are some of the hiring mistakes that people have? And number one is not really spending time crafting the job post. A lot of the times it's, I always think about the job post as, it's like you're down to job post. It's like a DTF job post. I'm gonna be using this dating analogy throughout this whole thing, so just bear with me if you're married or in a very committed relationship. So, but it very much is like that, like they had like the job post is like, I just kind of want to like hit it and quit it. Like, you just stick something on there because you want to get people. But as marketers, as business owners, I want you to think about the job post as something that you are creating to qualify. It's like a marketing campaign. It's like a sales email outreach. You are really looking to have the right messaging so that people qualify themselves and also unqualify themselves. The other thing is, not specifying on the application anything beyond the resume. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Sometimes you're just like, send me a link, send me the resume, look at the profile. But that doesn't give you any more information. No more ammo, no more of the stuff that you really need to make a more defined decision. Also, it doesn't help qualify people because they can just kind of, blast their resume everywhere. And it doesn't give you an inclination of whether or not they want to work for you. Spending too much time on unqualified candidates. I can't even stress that enough. Not having a timeline for recruiting and onboarding. Setting expectations, and this one goes with number 5, is huge and really, really important because we want to make sure that people understand where they are because they're shopping, right? People are shopping for gigs. They're like, let me get, 20 hours here and 10 hours here and 5 hours here, or flexibility here, or full-time here, part-time here, contractor, offshore. Like, I want to be able to travel and do this and spend 5 days, like 5 hours a day. So understanding where your candidate's at and setting the right expectations so that you find a good fit is huge. Because right now in the gig economy, there's more, I don't know, it's like there's so much more choices for people to be able to find work. Now, I'm going to give you guys this hiring checklist, which is huge. I'm also going to send you some tools after this. If you guys decide that, this is a totally like you want to go and do it yourself, and, run with it tomorrow. I'm here to answer any questions. And this is a really good checklist. I've tried this with everyone who is hiring, like a 3-hour a day VA to an experienced like sales executive, producer, number 2 in the business, for 6, 7, 7-figure businesses. So this checklist really ranges those fundamentals. That's going to make sure that you've just crossed your I's, dotted your T's, and you're doing everything you possibly can to find the right person. All right, let's talk about your needs. That is a really important thing because there's your wants and then there's your needs. So a lot of the time, we might want a lot of things, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we can afford a lot of things. So it's very important to understand what that person is. And I can send this to you guys afterwards, so you don't have to take too many notes now, but I want you to write down, who your next hire is and what will you have them actually do in terms of responsibilities. Because sometimes people fill this out and they realize, they think they're looking for a full-time employee, right? Like, oh, I'm looking for a sales executive. Right? And then what they'll have them do is like, oh, I need them to list build. I need them to, prospect. I need them to, write emails and do outreach and all of that. And you don't need to pay 60 to 70 grand plus commission on a high-level sales exec to do some basic sales coordination and list building and everything of that nature, right? So list building you can get at the Philippines for like $5 to $7 an hour. If you're doing emails, you can get that in Eastern Europe. I mean, I'm mentioning different places because I know that this group is thinking about how to be cost effective. So, you're looking at, certain things being done under $15, under, some things can be done as a project. If you just need an email campaign done, that's not necessarily a recurring task. It could be a one-off project with a couple of, variations. So thinking about things as, all right, is this a project that I need to do? Is this something that I'm going to have to like tally up in my monthly costs? And do all of these things really match up to that next hire? Or do I need several people? Is it less expensive for me to piecemeal this, right? Like sometimes I find that people are like, oh, well, I need someone to do my bookkeeping and my social media. Those are 2 very different tasks, right? A community manager is going to have a very different type of skill set than someone who is either reconciling your books or looking at your financials. And they're also going to be at different price points. So to try to get someone to do everything might actually cost you a lot more money. So this is something that I want you guys to really think about as you're trying to distribute tasks, because then you can contextualize them, clump them, and say, okay, do I need 1 person or maybe I need 2 or 3, and I can lower my costs. All right. The other thing is, back to this dating analogy, right? Sometimes you're trying to find that Mr. or Mrs. forever. And right, and you don't want to necessarily marry your employees. And I know that and sometimes your employees are like the people that you speak to the most, right? They're the people who like will support you and get you excited and like you do something, and they're the ones like they're first there, like, yeah, let's go, let's kick ass, yeah. So it's great, and you really want someone that's going to be there and move your business forward. All right, so I want you guys to put in the chat if you're looking for a Mr. or Mrs. right now or Mr. or Mrs. forever. So for right now, put 1, forever, put 2. And I want you to think about this, because same way that I say don't marry your systems, I say don't marry your employees. And the reason is that a Mr. right now or Mrs. right now can really help you, Mr. right now, can really help you put into place certain things in your business that you might need for the next one, right? And so I know it sounds, and it's not to sound like, oh my God, we're using these people, but they're part of the business and we want them to add value. So, ways that they can add value is also to help you document, to help you create training, to help you put things in place for the next person, because chances are when we're looking at the freelance economy, the turnover is high. And this is just a matter of fact, right? People don't stay around, especially if you're looking at millennials, and the stats on that are incredible. people just don't stick to jobs that often, especially if they're on the lower paying side. So we want to just understand that. And we know that, if we're having someone there, they can help us to create things for the business, beyond their specific job, to make sure that they're putting things in place for the next person, right? For the next person that might cost us more money, that might be there for a longer time. All right, understanding the market. Now, if you can see here are two different places. This particularly is looking for someone who is doing Facebook ads, right? So we're looking for a Facebook ads manager, optimizer. And in here, you can see, okay, the locations vary between domestic, the UK, Bangladesh, India. The price range is different here, anywhere between $10 an hour. We're looking at pounds. I think the spreadsheet was a little longer. We had some euros in there as well. And right now there's two different places. There's Upwork, there's People Per Hour, there's Online Jobs PH, Outsourcely. There's many different places that we can go and find where these people exist, and we can sort for them based on job title, based on location. I know that Upwork has this really cool thing where people will take certain assessments, so we can test them for their assessment rate, for how many reviews they've had, for how long they've been in there, and so I say sometimes if you're looking to lower your costs, you might want to get someone who's brand new to the platform, because those people they tend to be a little less expensive as they're trying to build their credibility and get reviews on the platform. Almost the way that you would think about a new restaurant being in Yelp, right? They tend to have way better customer service sometimes, like they're really trying to get those reviews. They know that they're being crowdsourced. So you tend to get a better deal per se, and more availability with new people. Now, if you're looking for higher expertise, that's where you might want to go and seek people that have been there for longer, that are making consistent income, that have piled on 30, 50, 100K on the platform, and you can see those numbers, which is really cool, because then you don't have to think about training as hard, right? So you definitely want to understand the market and understand that there's going to be a trade-off between how much you spend in money and how much you spend in time and training. So someone who's more expensive, and this goes for hiring across the board, right? Doesn't matter if it's junior, entry, C-suite. It's the same thing, right? People who are more green, you have to spend time and equity in terms of, training. People who have more expertise, they're able to ramp up quicker, and there's pros and cons to each one. So understanding the costs, the location is also very important. If you have someone that is going to be customer serving, whether that's in person, over the phone, on like digitally, it could be in social media, if you have to understand what your time needs are. So if someone is on the other side of the globe, they're probably going to have a different schedule than you. So they may not be the best person if you want very, very quick customer service, right? Like if you're okay with lag time, and, for certain projects, I love waking up in the morning and just seeing a whole bunch of stuff done, right? And then I know, okay, well, I have some time to review, and then I do my project management, and then they go off and I go to sleep and the work gets done and I wake up, which is great for certain tasks, but not amazing if I need someone to reply to a customer within a 2-hour time frame, right? Because if they're on the other side of the world, it's not going to work. So location is really important in understanding that, as well as price range, and then just taking a look at this, right? Now, job titles are so random. It's really good to understand what's going on in these, right? So you see like Facebook ads expert for $12 an hour in Bangladesh. Are they really an expert? Who knows, right? I mean, some of these people are experts. You'd be amazed. Some of them are super green. So you just have to understand what it is that you're getting yourself into. And it's great to do some kind of comparison this way. All right, we talked about the job post. And I will talk about the job post again. I think the job post is super important. A lot of the times people just slap it together. Now, raise your hand if you've ever been guilty of slapping a job post together and you could put a 1 for that. And I definitely have. Like, and I know not to do that. Okay. And the thing is that sometimes we're in such a crunch. We're like, oh my God, I want to do that. The second thing that people do that I see this done all the time is, you ask friends and family, like, hey, do you know any good VAs? Like, hey, do you know a good Facebook person? And it's like a super random like thing. Hey, do you know anyone who does video editing? Who's ever done that? I did that last month. Like, and I paid for it. I was like, I need a video editor, right? And they're like, and if I had done a little bit of research, like, do I want a documentary video editor? Do I want someone who can like handle iPhones? Do I want someone who's like not going to be on me about like sound quality? Do I, just like really understanding what I needed. And the price points were all over the place because I was super vague. The last offense is going on Facebook, and it's kind of like the extension of friends and family. Like, you go on a Facebook group, it's like, hey, does anyone know a video editor? Can you like DM me? Okay, I think I was there last month. I did all of the offenses, and it's just not smart. The reason why is because it just creates more work for you, right? Because now you're filtering like a bunch of randos, and you're not even giving people stuff to qualify themselves with. And the job post, whether like even if you're sending the job post to your grandmother, it's really good so that your grandmother can then crowdsource her friends, and their grandsons or granddaughters and get you some people that you need. So it doesn't matter who the job post is going to. It's not about them. It's so that people can see it and then qualify themselves in or out. And if you're in one of these platforms like an Upwork or a Fiverr, like, you definitely want to have a job post. For various reasons. One, you're going to get a huge infiltration of responses, and you want people to really qualify themselves. Secondly, most of the people on there are slapping together stuff so that that someone who's actually going to read into your job post, even if it's like there, you can have amazing people actually want to do the work. They're like, oh, okay, this is going to take some effort and I'm into it. Right? Like they want the challenge. Craigslist, most people say that they can never find anyone, like Craigslist has gotten super, dingy, but I have found some amazing people off of Craigslist because the resume portion of it, what we asked for, the job post, the resume, the qualification questions were huge. And here's a trick, right? So this is sort of in between the job post and the actual piece of it, which is the interview section. We want to, inside of our application or job post, ask some qualifying questions. Now, I used to do this thing where I was like, okay, well, you have to have a filter interview, and you get on the phone with them and you ask them your like your deal breaker questions. But now, because of technology, we can really automate this in a really cool way and even have a second filter right on the application process. And what I'm talking about is, so back to our dating analogy, for a lot of people who go on a first date, they have some criteria, right? Whether that criteria is, I want him to be tall, dark, and handsome, or I want her, to be like a really independent, awesome woman who's got a job and doesn't like need me every day and isn't clingy. Like, whatever your criteria is, like however superficial or deep or spiritual or whatnot, like, people go in there with a couple of deal breakers. Like, this is a no for me. And it's the same thing in your business, right? And it all goes back to like, what are your values, right? Like, what do you need? If you're looking to offshore, you might need very reliable internet connection. And people don't think about this, right? They're all like, oh my God, it's great to hire people from like these, places. But then when their internet's down and it's monsoon season and you're screwed, what are you going to do? So here's an opportunity. And I ask people straight, like, okay, rate your internet from 0 to 10. If it goes off, like, what do you have in terms of redundancies, right? And you'll get all sorts of answer, because people who are qualified will know that this is an issue. They're like, oh, I put together savings to take a cab to the nearest cafe, which is 20 minutes away. I have a backup generator. I have, backup, data and Wi-Fi so that I use my phone's, like, mobile's data. And if not, I use my husband's. Like, people legit, like, can answer this, who are in the know, who are actually doing the capabilities that you need, right? Like these are the people that you want, the ones that are reliable. Another thing is meeting deadlines. Like, what do you do if you miss a deadline? I love reading the responses for this, right? Because I get everyone, I think I saw one the other day, it was like, I don't miss a deadline unless I'm dead. and although funny, most likely unrealistic. Everyone at some point or the other misses a deadline. So I like it when people are just really honest. They're like, oh, well, the first thing I do is, see why the deadline's missing, see who I need to communicate with, talk to my team, see what we can do to like get the deadline. If not, figure out what the communication to the client needs to be. And it's real. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is someone who's like been there, done that, and can handle and manage these certain things. So deal breakers, you can use a form like Typeform, Jotform, Google Forms. I'm a big fan of Google Forms just because they're super easy. And anywhere between like 3 to 5 deal breaker questions. You can have people do a video and answer a question. If they're not that great in video, then they can do like a screencast of something. I think I had a client who's, like they're in Arizona and they're super like chill and hippie and, like they're always like doing yoga. And so one of their deal breaker things, because they really wanted a fit for culture, was to send a video clip of their favorite outdoor activity, right? So whether it was like, them doing it or just an explanation of what it was, or, a screencast of like, the article that they read. And it was cool because it got people to show their personality. And it really qualified for culture. And I think she got someone who did like this crazy water thing with a pole. I don't even know what it's called. It's like an extreme water sport. And it was, it was a perfect fit. And that was like the type of thing where we start to really figure out like, who do we want from the get-go? All right. Qualified, like, and then we qualify even more. All right, so they've done the interview, we've done the job post, now we have the questions, right? The interview. Now, by this time, you really should only be interviewing like 5 people. And this is why we do all this work up front, right? Because some people are like, oh my God, now I have to interview 20 people. No, this is not the system we're going for. That is a total waste of time, and you just don't have that. You're hustling and you're doing work, and you're handling sales and you're handling clients, or maybe you're doing product development. Like, no one has time for that. Who here has ever spent a crazy amount of time doing interview and has regretted it? Put a 1. I mean, I think I had told you guys, I interviewed at some point like 100 people a day. I mean, given I was told to, but it was just insane. All right. And here's some questions, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but you want to have some position questions and some behavioral questions. So position questions are very broad, generic questions, and they're the same across the board, and usually they're done for a reason. These are the most simple questions to ask and the most simple questions to mess up if you're a candidate, right? It's like, tell me about yourself. Some people can't. Why are you looking for this new role? Right? Like, I mean, and that's super telling. Why should we hire you? Some people haven't done the research. They're going to come to you completely empty-handed. And some people are going to completely impress you because they've looked at all of your information. They've read your blog posts. They've internet stalked you. They have, and they're going to know exactly what to say to tell you like why they really want to work for you, which is awesome. And it goes on and on. And then there's behavioral questions. So these are the type of questions that are like, they're in the past, and they get to like how people react to things. And this is great. And then there's also some, I call them crystal ball questions, which is where you give people examples of what's currently going on in your organization, and you ask them how they would react. And so it could be something along the lines of, hey, we're working with this type of client, and this is the 5th campaign that we're doing for them, or this is the 5th thing that we're doing for them, and they decide to make changes in the last minute. Like, what do you do? How do you handle this? Right? Like, last minute changes from clients, that's very common. We have a team member who is out, and all of a sudden, like, we're stuck with a new client, and what do we do? Like, what do you do in this situation, given that you don't know the responsibilities? Or I have to leave for vacation, and I'm, all of a sudden I have no cell reception, and a client is, going absolutely nuts because their campaign stalled. What do you do? All right, so these are like getting them to think critically about placing themselves inside of your organization with the stuff that's actually happening in your organization, which is great. But that is them talking the talk. And some people are very, very good about, being smooth talkers. But what do we do with those people? All right, so let's say we interview 5 people or 4 people. Now we want to try a couple of people because we want to be able, again, to qualify for those people that are reliable and consistent. And we want to see, how do they communicate? How do they show up to work? How do they, finish the tasks? How quickly do they finish the tasks? And sometimes we're putting something out there where we're not exactly sure. Now, I always think it's a good idea to, whatever you're doing, having people do in terms of a trial, and what a trial is either a project or, a set of time where they're going to be working inside of your organization. And how we do this is we set them inside of our project manager. And whether you're using like a Trello or a Basecamp or an Asana or whatever your project manager is, and if you have a project manager, type it in. I'd love to see what you guys are using. If you don't, Trello and Asana are free, depends if you're visual or not, and I'm happy to give recommendations. So you want to put a task list in there and invite them to the task list and actually have like a project written out. Now, it's really good for you to know what that project is beforehand, in terms of like someone on your team or yourself has done it, so you know how long it takes to do. Asana and ZenKit, oh yeah, those are great, right? So we want to know how long it takes. So let's say it takes 5 hours, right? So like a typical person on your team is going to take them 5 hours. You want to give the trial 5 hours. Or if you want to be a little sneaky, here's a hack. You give them a little bit less time than someone on your team because you want to know what it's like if they don't finish a project, right? Now, that's going to give you an indication of what does it look like when they're under pressure? What does it look like if they're not like finishing a deadline? Do they finish and donate the hours to you? And they're just like, okay, because they really want the gig, which shows a lot of intention. Do they basically say like, screw it, I'm not doing this? Do they give up? Do they communicate with the team like, hey, I'm doing this and I really think it's going to take 5 hours instead of 4. Is there an opportunity to increase the hours? Right? So you want to see how they communicate. So there's a little hack in terms of giving them a time frame, and you always want to give them a container and a time frame. And the reason why you want to test at minimum of 2 people at the same time, I think the magic number is around 3. And I know this is going to cost you money, right? Because these are not free tests. I don't suggest that you do them as free because people will not put the same amount of effort if they're not getting paid, especially in these platforms. So you're going to spend a little bit more money up front, but you're going to save so much more money on the back end because you're going to be able to like disqualify a lot of people. And you're going to see, okay, this person's a superstar. They're organized, they responded, they got onto the stuff, how quickly do they ramp up? What kind of questions do they ask? And you want them interacting inside of your project manager already. And you might create a separate task just for them. They don't have to touch anything else, right? And that way they just have their own like world that they're interacting with you and your team, but you want them inside of that communication system. All right, now we have a couple of people that we're trying out. And at this point, it's really good to make sure that we're evaluating apples to apples, not like lemons to watermelons. And we want to keep some kind of scorecard. I think a Google Sheet is perfect for this. And we're really looking and evaluating them so that we're like, okay, well, this person, and what you might see is you might start off with 3 and you end up with 2, right? Because someone might drop off. And that's really normal. And that it's so much better to know that in the first couple of hours of working with someone than 2 months later. After you've trained them, you've developed them, and you're like, and then they leave you. So it's actually a good thing if they drop off. it's again, go back to that dating analogy. It's so much better that you're not like spending years of your life with someone or months of your life with someone. It's really good to move on to that quality person. So we want to compare apples to apples, and there's things in here. We don't want to have a bunch of criteria. We want to say, okay, what are the current things that we want? Like, is it reliability, detail oriented? How are they doing? And this particular spreadsheet doesn't have it, but we want to have a metric for their task, right? So whether, let's say we're dealing with list builders, and okay, we're going to try a couple of list builders. Maybe our metric is their bounce rate. We want to know how clean their data is. Let's say we're playing with a couple of community managers. We want to know, how many comments their posts get, right? Like, we want to say, okay, this is the engagement. So if you, especially having a metric in there that's really, really important, so that we can not only measure like the really positive things in terms of the more intangibles, but we also want a metric. All right. So some roadblocks. And if you guys want to, list out some roadblocks that you've had in the past, I'm happy to address those. But I want to talk about, as you're going into these platforms, especially these international platforms, there's a couple of things, and there's way more than this, right? I'm just highlighting some of the big ones that you might get into. So some of them are like cultural idiosyncrasies. So let's say if you're dealing with people in Southeast Asia, at least in this time period, and obviously I'm generalizing here, but it is a thing that gets faced. Sometimes people don't want to use video. Also in Argentina, I don't know why. I have no idea, but it's a common thing. Like, people don't want to use like particular videos, or they're very like stuck on like, I only want to use Skype, or so just understanding those things and working around them. So if you're doing one of those deal breaker filter questions in your form with your application, instead of saying like, okay, please place yourself on video and tell me, about yourself or why you want this job, or an activity, you might ask them to do a screencast, so they themselves are not on video. So there's little workarounds, but it's just understanding those idiosyncrasies that in America we may not necessarily think of at all. So that's important. Another bit is just making sure that you set clear expectations. I had a client recently, and it was really funny because I was auditing like her hiring, and she did the job post, right? So she, then she had them fill out this like, remember I said you want about like 3 to 5 filter questions. I mean, this is not included like name, profile link, and email address, right? Like 3 actual questions. I think it was like 25 to 30 questions. Then she sent them another email asking them more questions. Then she sent them another email asking more questions. And I was like, oh my God, like this is like the never ending loop. Most people dropped off. I think one person cursed at her. She's like, I don't understand what I'm doing. And it wasn't the fact that she was asking so many questions, even though I told her that, it was better that she really prioritized them and then handle a lot of that stuff in the trial. Well, it was mostly that she wasn't setting up the expectation. She wasn't saying like, hey, please fill out this form. You're going to have an interview. And this is going to be a project-based gig at first that could lead into a full-time or part-time or a consistent gig. However the wording is of your needs are, going back to that needs section, just making it really clear. Because it's messed up for someone who thinks that like, oh my God, they're applying to a 40-hour gig, and it turns out that it's only 2 hours a week, right? So really setting up those expectations. Then for the trial, right? Like, I know some people will try to get people off the platform. Again, like a dating app, you want to stay on platform for a while till you feel comfortable and there's enough trust and credibility till you're, off the platform. The other thing that's good for staying on the platform, let's say if you're using Upwork, there's something called a work diary, and you can ask people to use it so you can see how they're doing work, which is really cool because then you can say, oh, okay, they were on Messenger for 3 hours. and now they're charging me for that 3 hours. I don't really necessarily think I should be paying for that. So, let me ask if they were doing research or if they were just running the clock. So the work diary is really good. Also, in the work diary, on the flip side, let's say they're like looking into some really cool stuff, and they're like really cool platforms or like growth hacking stuff, and that you don't even know about. It's and then you can ask them about it, and you get geeked out, and then you're like, oh wow, this is someone who's really innovative. I really want them in my business. So it works multiple ways. The other thing that my lovely client did is that she went back because she's like, oh my God, I need a person. And she went back to that sort of a couple of people that weren't that great, and tried to re-engage them. And that is going on a couple of bad dates and then later just giving up on the platform. You're like, oh man, I can't go on another bad date. I'm just going to go with that one. I'm going to settle because, at least they were close to dinner. And, I get it. Sometimes you need a person. And I'm not saying that it's not, sometimes you can find someone to do different types of work. You're like, oh, well, they had a different skill set. That's very different than going back and just settling for someone that isn't going to be good, because you're going to go back to the same thing. And it's this vicious cycle. All right. So lastly, I want to talk to you about a couple hacks. All right. So the first one was, filtering via form. And you can use Google form, Typeform. I think this is really amazing. And even there's a little hack. If you use Typeform, which is really pretty, like the UI is just really nice, and it's very branded, you can now hook it up to get the answers in Google Form Sheet. And so you can see everyone, and you can see all your candidates and measure them apples to apples. Again, I'm very, very big on that, because I feel like when we interview people and we go through the recruiting process, sometimes we could be like, I feel like, and you won't remember, John from Jane. All right, using the situational questions are going to be key, because it puts people not in the past, right? Of what have you done? It doesn't put them in a hypothetical, what would you do? But it puts them in a situation. It's like, hey, if you're dealing with this, how are you handling this? And this comes from management consulting case study questions. We're just using a very, very, we're using a sophisticated method in a very digestible way. When we give people instructions for the trial, I think using screencasts and, a quick, anywhere between 2 to 7 minute video in that time frame to explain to them exactly what you need them to do. So I think it's important to write it out. But if you can create a quick video to train them, it goes a long way, because it'll show people exactly what their expectation is of doing. And it'll just get them working faster. And of course, I'm huge on this for all of types of training and development. Once you get someone who is an employee, and then you're training them from the very beginning that this is how they're going to get trained, which is pretty cool. The wrench is one of my favorite hacks. Now, the wrench is throwing someone in terms of when they're doing their trial, you're going to throw a wrench in the system. And this sounds a little demonic, but it works. A lot of the times when we're looking for freelancers, we have this urge, this need for people to just be able to handle things or manage things or be able to just figure it out. So the wrench tests for this. And the way that we test for this is during the trial. Let's say we're asking someone to create 3 posts. Right? And they're communicating and blah, blah, blah. So we set up a milestone right before they're about to end, and we give them another thing to do. Right? So it's oh, actually the client, asked us to do this additional post. Can you do it? Right? Because a lot of the times we're dealing with last minute stuff. So that's a perfect wrench situation. Or we ask them to create an audience on Facebook. And then we say, the client changed their demographic. We now need to look for X, or we need to create a lookalike for this, right? And we want to throw the wrench in before they're complete, right? Because if we throw it afterwards, you can, but it's a little funky. We want to do it before they're ending, so that we want to see how they react to change. Small business owners, we have to handle so many different things, and we need to be able to have people that we can rely on and that can actually handle stressful situations and manage change. All right. Lastly is automations, right? So once you get a good workflow with someone, figure out how we can start to create some automations around it. And there's some great tools around that. Beyond Zapier, there is, I think it's called Automation.io. I'm going to send you guys a list of different tools for your tech stack. And automations are great, especially like if you get a new client. Let's say you have a freelancer who's helping you onboard new clients. And then we figure out, okay, what's the good flow of this? And let's create some automation around it. Because what that will do is it will help to save you some money. And then you can elevate that person that you've hired into a better, cooler gig, and like they can manage that. We can give them more work. And now we have an asset, like a person who's more valuable, who's able to manage the automations because they've already done it manually. And we're able to give them more work for, and in terms of our budget, we're not spending that much more money. So that's really cool. Like we're able to, have a person who's giving us value, and then we're just increasing our cost by just a little bit, or maybe even not, right? Like if they're okay with like lowering their hours, we're able to offset it and create more work with the same amount of people. So we're managing a lot less. All right, guys. So lastly, I want to talk to you a little bit about ScaleBox. Now, I know that I said I was going to send you some tools, which is really awesome. And they're going to be like great for the do-it-yourself type stuff. And just so that you know, if you're a client of Scale Time with us, we charge about $3,000 a month, and we help you with workflows. We help you create them. We help you with your tech, selecting the right tech for you. We help you manage your people and all of this. And we work one-to-one with you, and it's really amazing, and people get massive results. However, my mission is to be able to create, more opportunity for implementation, more opportunity for success at a lower rate, because I know that $3,000 for a small business owner is expensive. A lot of the businesses that I deal with are 7-figure. Makes sense, they can afford it. But for everyone else who's like, I want some of that, but I can't afford it, I created ScaleBox. And ScaleBox is my baby. I love it. And basically what I'm doing is I'm giving you a huge, gigantic library of tech solutions. We've got over like 250 tech solutions that you can sort by what you need. There's a community. There is, and like the people quote from Alex Portero, there's a lot of dope people in there. They're very, very intelligent. And mostly is, if you're looking for hiring, all of the templates that we talked about are in there. So there's resources for hiring, there's guides for hiring, and all the templates, you can just grab and go. You can grab and go job posts. You can grab and go, sort of these measuring sheets. If you have a handbook for people, like once they're onboarding, we've got a bunch of onboarding material. So once you get a freelancer in, what do you do with them? How do you like train them? And we're doing this for $247, which is a huge fraction of what my one-on-one clients pay. But, just on that, it's not only that. We're offering the templates, the community, but I didn't want to create something where it was just this thing that you shelf. I really wanted something where you guys are going to be supported to implement. My obsession is implementation right now. I want people, and I don't care if they've got $1 in the bank or $1 million or 10 million. I want them to implement, because it's the only way that's going to move their business forward. And if you're thinking about hiring, you are most definitely thinking about implementing. And we want to make sure that you're supported. So we're doing these one-on-one 15-minute power sessions, which are incredible. I've had people say like, well, how are you doing? How much can you get done in 15 minutes? Well, I've been able to review like an entire onboarding process in 15 minutes and tell people what's missing and what they need to put in place. We've created scorecards for their freelancers. We've created scorecards for clients. We've created nurture sequences. Like there's so many things that we're able to do in 15 minutes. It's insane. Just even knowing like what you're doing right, what could be done better, and having action items. Everyone leaves with action items, and there's a recap. And then also we're doing power trainings. And every Monday we come together as a community, and someone gets a hot seat for 30 minutes and they talk about like what's important in their business. So last week we talked through proposals and how to create like really effective proposals. The week before that, we talked about how to deal with sales objections, right? Like, okay, you're on the call, you got them, but like now people are, giving you all these reasons why they think they should buy, but maybe not. And our sales expert came in and gave that. And it's really an amazing opportunity. And for today, for the next 48 hours, I have a promo, and the promo is webinar 50 for this very special group. And it's going to, make it so that it's $197, where it's still relatively a new product. So we're playing with the pricing, and we definitely think it's going to be anywhere in the 300 to 500 range. This is a huge, huge rate. And I'm doing it because I think all of you ladies are super boss ladies, and I just want you to succeed and implement and make this a no-brainer so that we can get you hiring the right people right now and making sure that they've got the right tasks and they're moving your business forward. All right. Well, having said that, do you guys have any questions? Do I think that Upwork is the best source overall? Upwork is a great source. I think it depends on who you're looking for. Upwork has really good, I think Upwork is really great. I really like people per hour. I think people in people per hour tends to be more technical sometimes. I think sometimes you can find people who are a little bit more tech savvy. So things such as like if you're doing YouTube SEO, or if you're doing any kind of growth hacking, I think people per hour is interesting. I think Upwork is really cool, just in general. And I think, like if you're looking for more generalists, that's really great. If you're looking for copy editors, or anything dealing with content, there's Writer Access. There's also Scripted. And so I think it just kind of depends on what you're looking for, the platform, which is why I think it's really good to do that sort of market research as your second step. There's a place called Hire My Mom, and that's a really cool, if you're looking for people who are customer service people. I always talk about finding customer service individuals or account managers or anyone that's dealing with people like in the Midwest, because they just take care of you. Like their customer service is amazing. I think I called QuickBooks once upon a time, and I got this woman from, oh God, where was she? She was definitely like from the South, I think. And she was just like, "Oh, honey, you didn't get your money. That's so terrible." And I was upset, and she just diffused me like a bomb in 2 seconds. And I was like, damn it. I was like, crap, that's great customer service. So, yeah, so I think it's depending on the type of skill set that you're looking. I think different platforms have better skill sets. And I don't know that like fully answers your question, but I'm happy to, to go more in depth with it for you offline. Right. And that's, and that's definitely like something that we could cover in a power session, where if you were like, oh my God, like here's the stuff that I need, and then we would review it. I could even do research with you and take a look at profiles and say, this works, this doesn't work, and just look at that and bang it out in like 15 minutes. It's insane. Yes, you will be getting a guide to hiring, and I will also put in there some of the platforms that I've been talking about, in terms of where to hire, and I'll give you guys some tools as well in terms of, different hiring tools, so that you guys can rock it out in terms of those trials I think those screencasting tools are key. And there's a bunch of really amazing free tools out there that are super easy to navigate. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for being here. We're a little bit on the hour, and I just want to say, if you guys are interested in ScaleBox, the promo is going to go off right now for 48 hours. It's really an amazing community of dope people. I love saying that. Very, very intelligent, very ambitious, good-hearted human beings who are just wanting to grow together and succeed. I'm very, very excited to have them in the community. Happy to answer any questions. And thank you so much for joining me for the webinar. I will be having a couple of more of these, and I will post in the groups. So if you think that this is something that someone else might benefit from, I'm super excited to have them, join us for another one. And yeah, thank you so much for being here. And I will see you in virtual land. Bye.